You could be building muscle almost twice as fast as you are right now. Not with this, but with stretch-focused training, which has seemed to crack the code to building muscle. I've even started experimenting it with my own training, and honestly, it seems like it's working. Don't just take my word for it though. I've assembled my elite crew of researchers to dive into the science, separate the truth from fad, and figure out the best way to use this training to build muscle faster. So whenever you lift weights, your muscles contract to lift the weight up and then stretch in order to lower the weight back down. But something special seems to happen when your muscles become stretched under load. The muscles can sense the stretch in the contractile units and in response, kickstart a complex process that tells the body to build more muscle. This is what researchers now term stretch-mediated hypertrophy. But not until fairly recently has more specific research actually put this theory to the test. And the findings were quite surprising, even to me. There's 4 studies I want to look at, with each of them testing a different muscle group. The first 2 tested what would happen if you only perform the bottom part of an exercise where the muscle is stretched. One of the 2, published just last year, tested this using preacher curls and assessed the growth in the biceps after 5 weeks. The result? The subjects that performed only the bottom half of the curl experienced 2.6 times more biceps growth than those who only performed the top half of the curl. Pretty cool, right? Another study, also published just last year, replicated an almost identical design, but this time on the leg muscles using leg extensions. They had subjects perform the bottom versus top half of the leg extensions and one more group who did the full range of motion. They measured the growth of the quad muscles at 4 different sites. After 12 weeks, growth at almost every single one of the measurement points was greater for the group who only performed the bottom half of the leg extension. Now, these 2 studies, they highlight the importance of the bottom position of your exercises because that's when your muscle is stretched the most. Well, what about exercises that can put your muscles into an even more stretched position than traditional exercises do? Would those exercises lead to more growth? Here's 2 studies that tested just that. The first study was done on the triceps. In this case, subjects had one arm assigned to cable pushdowns, whereas the other arm was assigned to overhead cable extensions. They performed these exercises twice a week, and to avoid favoring one arm over the other, every workout, the subjects alternated which arm that they trained first. Now, based on the stretch-focused training theory, since the overhead position places one of the triceps heads, the long head of the triceps, into a position of greater stretch when compared to pushdowns where your elbows remain by your side, it would be the more effective exercise. But what actually happened? Well, after 12 weeks, the overhead arm experienced about 1.5 times more growth. Not just in the long head of the triceps, but surprisingly, in all the 3 heads of the triceps. The last study I want to cover was done on the hamstrings. In this case, there were 2 groups of subjects, each assigned with a different exercise. One group did seated leg curls and the other group did lion leg curls. Now, since 3 upper 4 hamstring muscles go from the hip down to the knee, a seated position stretches them into a longer length than a lying position does. So based on this, can you tell which exercise came out on top? After 12 weeks, the seated leg curls provided significantly more growth in these 3 hamstring muscles than the lion leg curls. All right, we've covered all the research. Now let's dive into the practical. There's 3 training tips that I have for you. The first tip applies to all your exercises. We know how important the bottom position of an exercise seems to be for growth. So when bench pressing, bring the bar down all the way to your chest and consider using dumbbells to get an even deeper stretch. When doing curls, fully extend your arm at the bottom. When squatting, come down to at least parallel or even further if you can. In addition to this, make sure you're actually controlling the weight down to the bottom position, and then when you get there, don't cheat or bounce out of it using momentum. It's often one of the hardest parts of the movement and you'll be tempted to cheat, but don't. Control the weight and remember that is potentially the most important part of the movement for growth. The next tip has to do with your exercise selection. Here's the 4 muscles and exercises I'd be comfortable recommending that you incorporate. The first 2 are the hamstrings and triceps. Using exercises like seated leg curls and any sort of triceps overhead extension will provide a greater stretch and lead to more growth. The biceps is another muscle I'd add to the list. One of its heads, the long head, can be positioned into an even greater stretch by performing a slight incline curl or behind the body cable curl.